Showed pictures, it said, were of rebel fighters killed in battle. The man on the microphone describes the men as rats serving a foreign agenda. These pictures have emerged purportedly showing a battle on Sunday in the town of Misrata, about 100 kilometers east of Tripoli. The amateur cameraman describes what he says is the blood of mercenaries. He says the post office was bombed by fighter jets. Gaddafi has again blamed the foreign media for distorting facts.
We don't wonder who is behind the foreign media and what their interests are. We think of them as channels conspiring and twisting the facts intentionally. I do not know the aim of these channels and who benefits from this.
As his propaganda campaign continues, he still seems almost oblivious to the increasing amount of civilians injured and killed. These images of wounded children were reportedly filmed in a hospital in Misrata. It's impossible to know exactly how many civilians have been killed and wounded so far, but a break in the military standoff will bring yet more intense fighting, and whatever that figure actually is sure to steeply rise. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Let's talk to Al Jazeera's Jackie Rowland, who's live for us now in Ajdabiya. Jackie, so reports of rebels being pushed back from some towns in Libya. What are you seeing over there in Ajdabiya?
Well, at the moment, the most intense fighting in this particular area is focused on the town of Bin Jawad, which is less than 200 kilometers away from Gaddafi's stronghold of Sirte. Now, the rebels had been advancing towards Bin Jawad, but it's clear that they've been encountering extremely strong resistance from the Gaddafi forces. Rebels returning from the front line have spoken of Gaddafi forces emptying the town of civilians and also using heavy weapons against the rebels. Disproportionate force was how one person described it to me. It seems quite clear that the Gaddafi forces have drawn a line in the sand. They cannot allow the rebels to run the risk of getting any closer to Sirte. Sirte, Gaddafi's stronghold, important for two key reasons. Firstly, because it is the base of Gaddafi's tribe, the people who are most loyal to him, and secondly, because there's an important military base at Sirte, where Gaddafi has a lot of his most heavy weaponry. The government forces cannot afford to allow this kind of machinery, this kind of equipment to get into the rebels' hands.
Jackie, in terms of the weaponry of the rebels, are the protesters outgunned? They're vulnerable to air attacks, aren't they, like we saw happen in Ras Lanouf?
Yes, in terms of equipment, the Gaddafi forces still have the upper hand. However, what the rebel forces maybe lack in quality, they make up for in quantity. As far as we can see, and we've been going up and down the coastal road that leads from here, Ajdabiya, right towards the front line, the Ras Lanouf, and towards Bin Jawad, we are seeing the rebels moving forward supplies, ammunition. We see that they have plenty of rocket-propelled grenades, a lot of bullets, so they don't seem to be short of ammunition, and they do also have a lot of equipment.
All right, we seem to have lost our correspondent there, Jackie Rowland, just giving us the update from what's happening there in Ajdabiya. Meanwhile, we can move on, and the French and British missions to the United Nations are working on a draft resolution that would lead to the creation of a no-fly zone over Libya. And earlier, a U.S. government spokesman said it was still considering a military response. Here is Paddy Culhane.
As the constant gun battles rage, the back and forth for control of a country, and Libyans die in numbers not yet known, the U.S. president sends a message.
We stand for democracy, we stand for an observance of human rights, and that we send a very clear message to the Libyan people that we will stand with them.
But the bigger question for these fighters is how will the U.S. stand with them, and when?
I wouldn't characterize the likelihood of further options being pursued as greater now, but we have said from the beginning that those options were on the table, and none of them have been removed from the table.
There's been a lot of talk about this so-called table, so let's take a look at what is supposedly on it. One option, instituting a no-fly zone. That's what the U.S. Senate is pushing for, but the U.S. military has pushed back, saying it would be complicated and would require military strikes. Another option being talked about by some politicians, giving weapons to the rebels.
It would be premature to send a bunch of weapons to a post office box in eastern Libya. We need to not get ahead of ourselves in terms of the options we're pursuing.
The administration says it wants to know more about the rebels first and adds sending weapons is not currently allowed under the existing UN sanctions. The other option, humanitarian assistance. This seems to be where the Obama administration is putting much of its focus, agreeing to give another $15 million to aid groups Monday. Some experts predict that will be the extent of what the U.S. will be willing to do.
It'll lean much more toward humanitarian assistance, like helping the refugees, for example, providing food, rather than actually using military force to attack Gaddafi.
The U.S. president can hear the cries for help from the battlefields, feel the push from the politicians, even in his own party, but in the end, only he can answer the question, what is the U.S. willing to do? Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, to give us a clearer picture of the latest developments in Libya, Hussam Al-Ghiryani is here with us. He's from the Libya Information Center. That's a non-political initiative based right here in Doha. Hussam, welcome to the program. So we were talking to our correspondent there on the ground in AlJazeera, and we also have reports of rebels that are being pushed back from some towns in Libya. I just want to get your perspective on whether rebels can continue this and hold themselves together.
First of all, the rebels, everybody recognizes, nobody denies that they are volunteers, majority of them volunteers, and what they've managed to achieve so far has been exceptional. I commend them, and as they have, what they did in such a short period of time has exceeded everybody's expectations. To have a minor setback like this is inevitable. I have no doubt that back and regroup is natural for any military force, but I don't think that the media is giving them a fair deal. They have achieved a lot, and they will achieve a hell of a lot more.
Okay, well, if we look at what's happening within the international community, all the talk now is on this no-fly zone, but there was also talk coming out of the White House on arming rebel groups. What do you make of that move?
Well, the issue right now, I believe, in my personal opinion, is not appropriate. Arms and ammunition around. What we want to do is to strangle this regime and bring it to an end, rather than fueling the conflict by adding more ammunition and adding more weapons and prolonging this campaign. And more weapons means more bloodshed, and we don't want this. What we want is to bring this to an end. This is a one-man show. Gaddafi and his kids are the ones manipulating these groups, whether they're Libyans who have been convinced by him, or whether they are mercenaries, or even Libyans who have been bribed one way or another to support him. What we want to say to these people is step away from this man and his kids, and this will be over, and the country can regain, or the people can regain control of the country and rebuild. But add more ammunition and add more weapons, it'll only prolong it and increase the bloodshed. And in my personal opinion, I think this is a wrong move. If the international community want to help, enforce this no-fly zone yesterday, not to negotiate and look at the preliminary and et cetera, enforce it immediately. And if they want to do more, surgical strikes. They would serve a great blow to the regime and bring an expeditious end to this